Welcome back to another edition of Ari Squared. We are your hosts, Ari Lev and Ari Berkowitz, coming to you guys on a Thursday. And Ari, I am super excited to announce some things. How about you?
Oh yeah, happy Thursday, Ari. I am very excited with what's been happening this past week.
In the name of the great Bart, I'm very excited. I'm super excited. You know why I'm super excited? You know why you are super excited? You know why we together here on RE Squared are super excited is because we are officially live on YouTube. Woo! Yes, sir. We are so excited. You can now get us not just in audio, but you can see these beautiful punim that Ari and I have that you have not been able to see yet. You can also find us on our website. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. Our Instagram is up and running. So, guys, you can now find more ways to connect with us. You can find more ways to go ahead and share us. So, please go ahead and give us a subscribe on YouTube. Go ahead and give us a follow on Instagram. And most importantly, help us together build the RA community. We very much welcome any comments and feedback that you guys have. So by all means, let's make the RE Squared community even bigger, even better. And we would love to engage with you guys more than we are today. So that is some super exciting news that we are kicking off this episode with. So very, very exciting.
Yes, it's really it's about time, and we're getting there, and this is just going to continue to grow. And thank you to all of our listeners up until now who have gotten us to this point, and to all of those first-time listeners listening in for the first time, we hope you will return.
And I'm sure they will, because this is an awesome podcast.
Agreed. Somehow I agree with that. It's really shocking that I do. But
you're a little biased, but it's okay.
Just a little, though. I can't really stand you most of the time, so it's basically like I understand 50% of the podcast. So that's
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're saying you're the smarter Ari in the RE Squared? Is that what we're going with here?
I would just say better. That's what I would say.
Oh. Listen, just because you're younger doesn't make you better. Just say.
It's all just. It is what it is, Ari. What can I say? The fact that we even need to explain it just means that it's just real. That's basically how it goes. But after all of this ridiculousness, we can get onto the actual beef of the discussion here on this week's podcast, which we definitely wanted to start with discussing a few interesting notes about the scheduling. And I know, Ari, you were very keen on a few specific notes regarding the schedule. And obviously it's going to continue to trickle in, and we'll really have a better idea of everything. But Ari, go ahead, kick us off. Well, what are your thoughts?
All right. Well, first of all, this is every NFL team's social media team, I should say, Super Bowl, because they do some of the craziest things. And I got to tell you, one of my favorite things about the NFL schedule release is what the social media teams do with it. And some of them have been super, super, super duper creative. They drop all kinds of Easter eggs in, knocks on their, division rivals. And the very fact that this is even an event just speaks volumes to how amazing and how widespread the NFL is. Think about it. Could you tell me when MLB's schedule releases, NHL's schedule release, the NBA schedule release? No, I can't. Can you?
No, I can't. And it's a great point that you make. And it just, the fact that the NFL has something built in that works directly with the current trends, which is, a smaller amount of something that gives it that novelty effect. And the NFL has absolutely mastered making every single one of these little moments into something they can market and further their brand. So power to them.
And it's quite amazing. They've really turned, even though the NFL season really, kind of spawns from from September through February, the NFL has done a phenomenal job at really being able to turn it into a year-long event. And they seem to find a way, even through the quote-unquote off-season, there's always something going on every single month to keep fans engaged. So really, power to them. They also do a phenomenal job in season from game to game, because let's not forget, there is only one game a week per team. They do a great job at keeping us fans engaged throughout. So, but on to the schedule. So from what we know already, firstly, the fact that the season this year is actually kicking off on Wednesday is kind of cool. Reason being is because we've got the Rams and 49ers squaring off in Australia on Thursday. So it's going to be kind of cool to see that happening. First NFL game there, which is expanding the NFL reach as a general thing. And we'll elaborate a bit more on the international games that have already been released. And what's interesting also is the fact that the Wednesday game to kick off the season is not the only official Wednesday game that we will be getting the season. The NFL this year is introducing a new Wednesday game, and that game is actually going to be taking place on Thanksgiving Eve. So we will be having on November 25th, we are going to be having a game between the Rams and the Packers that will be in SoFi, and that's going to be another Wednesday game. And what's really cool is now between the Thanksgiving Eve game, the 3 games on Thanksgiving game itself, and the Black Friday game, we now have a whole lot of football going on during that, which is kind of cool. So pretty cool to see like the way that they've gone ahead and done that. Some of the other things we already know is my New York Football Giants will be hosting the Dallas Cowgirls for our season opener, ushering in the Harbaugh area. I am super pumped, and I cannot wait to smack those freaking Cowgirls in the face and really start the season off with a statement win over the Cowboys at home. And yes, I know, and all the people are going to be, well, you know, if you look at the past couple of years, over the 10 years in general, when we've been generally kicking off against the Cowboys and history has not been in our favor, I'm excited for what's coming with Harbaugh, and I believe that we are going to take it to them on first game of the season. And it was very considerate of the NFL, even for local New York fans, to wait for kickoff to happen after Rosh Hashanah ends. So for all of our Jewish fans out there, especially ones located in New York, you will be able to actually see the games there. Other things that we already know, the Monday night football opener will be the Kansas City Chiefs against the Denver Broncos. And what I find to be very interesting about that game is I believe that Patrick Mahomes is going to beat all medical odds, and he's going to be starting that game, because why else take a primetime game at the beginning of the season if we're going to have whoever their backup is, or it might be even their 7th rounder rookie QB that they picked, if that's who they thought was going to be starting, there's no way that they give this kind of marquee matchup. So
you want to watch Justin Fields?
Oh God. No, I really do not want to watch Justin Fields play, not on Monday Night Football and not on any night football. Maybe if he was in the UFL, maybe he would get a little bit more pull. So I really think that shows just how much they trust that Mahomes is going to be back to start in that game, which is kind of crazy in its outright. The Buffalo Bills will be the ones starting Thursday Night Football. They will be hosting the Detroit Lions and rushing in their new stadium, which from everything I've seen is just going to be absolutely sick. That stadium is, as much as it's an open air, the technology that they have in there in order to be able to keep the snow out, keep the fans warm. And not only that, but they're even going so far as they're going to have 8 different sensory rooms for fans that are, have some autism or some other thing that gives them sensory issues, where if things get too loud, they'll be able to go into those rooms and calm down. And it's going to be really cool to see the stadium that they have planned there. And I'm excited for the unveiling and the Detroit Lions. That's going to be a good game. So I'm excited to see that. We do know, in terms of the Thanksgiving Eve games, we do know that like I mentioned, the Packers will be hosted by the LA Rams in SoFi. We've got the Dallas Cowboys facing off against the Eagles. So that's going to be a cool, division showdown on there. And then to get to the international games, and then Ari, of course, love to hear your thoughts on what we know so far. So we've got the Niners and the Rams facing off against each other in Australia. That's in week 1. In week 3, we will be having the Ravens against the Cowboys in Brazil. Week 4, we've got the Colts against the Commanders in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London. Week 11, we've got the Eagles facing Jacksonville in Tottenham as well. In week 6, we've got the Texans against the Jaguars in Wembley. Week 7, we've got the Steelers against the Saints in Paris, in France. In week 9, we've got the Bengals against the Falcons in Spain. Week 10, we've got the Pats against the Lions in Munich, in Germany. And finally, rounding out the international series in week 11, we've got the Vikings playing against the 49ers. By the way, on the note of the 49ers, they are going to break the record for travel this year. They will be traveling a whopping 38,000 miles over the course of the season, which just is absolutely insane. So, Ari, tell me, let's start with the international games. Which is your favorite and which is I'm not bothering to even watch?
So I just want to say to any of those people that are fans of the Premier League, and I want to make sure that they know that not everyone on this podcast thinks that it's pronounced Tottenham, but it's rather Tottenham, which is an important distinction for those people that are fans of that team. I mean, come on. So let's just get that out of the way. And
for those of you who cannot see, I'm nodding my head and making faces at Ari.
But beside for that, I mean, I think that it's really cool that the 2 Wednesday games this year are both going to be played by the Rams. And I don't know if any specific game jumps out to me more than the fact that it's just everywhere this year. It's literally everywhere. Like, it's wide. How many continents is that? South America, obviously, North America, Europe, Australia. So like they're hitting 4 out of the 6 possible continents.
Yeah. I don't think we're gonna ever see a game in Antarctica.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon. But it's pretty wild. Asia and Africa, I don't know if and when they're going to be on the NFL's radar to have games there, but I'm sure that they are trying to think of how and when to do that as well.
An interesting continent that I think we're going to see added to that list, probably before we see somewhere in Asia, may very well be Africa, actually, because we are seeing an increase in players coming from the continent, getting drafted and playing in the NFL. And an interesting potential site for that game would actually be in Egypt. So it would be interesting to see if the NFL wind-up kind of goes there. Of course, nothing would make me happier than to see an NFL game played here in Israel. I think that would be cool. And I'm hoping with these, please God, Team Israel will make the Olympics with our flag team in the 2028 Olympics. And I hope that will already put put Israel even more on the map in the football world than it already is.
So if there was one place that I'd envision them having a game in the next few years that isn't on the list, it would definitely be somewhere in the Emirates region, like somewhere in the Middle East, like Qatar, or Saudi Arabia that have built or are building all of these brand new, ridiculous Olympic style stadiums. The one drawback to Israel is that their stadiums are not that well equipped for football for a few reasons. They'd probably have to do a serious amount of overhaul before hosting, but that so same with Brazil. Like Brazil had to do a crazy job, and all of the players on the Eagles, and I can't remember who they were playing, the Packers last year, they were all pretty upset about it. So I mean, we could definitely do that. We could definitely have a game and have the players upset about that at this point.
I agree with you, but I do think that's a good observation in terms of seeing a either in the UAE, in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia. I could absolutely see a NFL game happening. I think another place, another country we could potentially see an NFL game happening in a lot sooner than later would be in Italy. I think that would certainly have its they could certainly host it, and they've definitely got the with how big soccer is there. They have stadiums that could more than equip that. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see exactly how that all plays out. I would say is in terms of, although you never directly answer the question, so I'm going to answer it for myself. I think out of my least favorite game of the international games, the one that probably has the biggest potential to be a dud, I'm going to say is going to be one of two games. It's either going to be the Steelers Saints or the Bengals Falcons. And I think the one that's probably most likely to be the biggest turd on this list is going to be Bengals Falcons, because I think the Bengals are just going to beat the absolute piss out of the Falcons in that game. And I don't think it's going to be very competitive.
Yeah, well, that goes back to the point where we've been kind of hating on the Falcons since they hired Stefanski and everything since. So, if
you want to get technical, I was actually hating on the Falcons since they signed Kirk Cousins and then drafted Michael Penix. But yeah, either way, I don't
think everyone. Ari Sagdiev, thank you. That's wonderful.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, like, they had the chance to, obviously they've been doing some things wrong for a while, but they had the chance to kind of resurrect, and they went with the hire of Kevin Stefanski, who just doesn't really fit the direction that franchise needs to go in at this point.
No, definitely not. All right, I'm going to end this segment quickly with some of the, and this is for our Giants fans out there, because, I am, when all is said and done, I am a Giants fan. So I can tell you that some of these schedule leaks for the Giants are as such. If these leaks are true, and we'll see, usually they are, we're going to host the Commanders in Week 10 on Thursday Night Football. We will be hosting the Cardinals in Week 4. We will be hosting the Titans in Week 3, which will be kind of interesting. Gable coming back, and Flott and Bellinger and Robinson. And then finally, we will also be hosting the Niners for the second year in a row in Week 13. So those are just leaks. I cannot confirm that those will be part of the final schedule. But generally speaking, when the leaks like this come out, especially like the day or two before, they generally end on being pretty correct. Before we move on, Ari, do you have any Jets-related schedule things that you want to throw out there, or are we moving on?
We are definitely moving on, Ari. Let's get into the discussion about quarterbacks. We now have not as much time to take care of everything in terms of what the conversation was supposed to be, but we can get started, and I'll throw it to you. I think that over the last few years, we've seen a very different trend in terms of both usage for quarterbacks and in terms of the talent level of quarterbacks coming out of college. And I was curious to hear your thoughts on how this trend really came to be, and if you think it has staying power. And that being said, you could also go ahead and talk about your favorites of the last few quarterbacks of the last few drafts. So what do you have to say, Ari?
So I'll tell you, I think that the problem that we have that's plaguing the league is this, is that you need the biggest emphasis and the biggest, I would say, key to either winning or losing is having a actual franchise quarterback. And while in the past we saw staying power, I remember if we look back to the Giants, right? And when they drafted Eli Manning, and I remember, and I'll be the first to say this, I remember right before what ended up being our Super Bowl winning season, I remember I was calling for both Coughlin's head. I was calling Eli a bust, and we need to get rid of him. And then we actually gave them the opportunity to they ultimately went ahead and ended up, winning the Super Bowl and beating the Pats, and the rest is history from there. And that was when Eli Manning actually got an opportunity to even make it to year 4. We see such a trend now where, number one, QBs are just not being drafted to teams that actually have a plan on how to properly develop them. There's no longer the thought of, well, we still have a veteran, so let's play them behind our veteran QB, such as we saw successfully with Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, Patrick Mahomes. Now it's just let's get them on the field as soon as humanly possible, even if they're not ready. And then there's such this win now mentality of, well, our QB, we're going to give him a year or two, and then we're moving on. I mean, just take a look at the Titans over the past few years and how they cycled through, first round QBs without even, taking a time to let him develop or see what can come out of them. And we saw it in Pittsburgh too with Kenny Pickett. We saw it in Philly with Carson Wentz. And it's just, we see just this, juggling of QBs way too quickly. And it's like, oh, you're not our franchise quarterback, so we're going to move on. So here's an interesting fact I want to throw at you, and it's actually going to come with a question. So 20 QBs have been drafted number 1 overall since the year 2000. Now, how many of them, Ari, have won a Super Bowl with the team that they were drafted by?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, obviously there's Eli Manning.
That is correct.
Is there? Technically he isn't, because he was drafted by the Chargers and then traded and all of that. So I don't know if he counts.
He does count.
He does count.
Yes.
Okay. Beside for that, I mean, I'm trying to think of quarterbacks. Matt Stafford obviously didn't win with his team. I'm trying to think of earlier. I can tell you that it hasn't happened since 2012. That much.
Well,
I can
I'll
tell
say
you.
for the sake of time, Eli Manning is the only
one,
the only one that has done it. And I'll tell you. Let's move on to phase 2 and question 2. Of those 20 QBs that have been selected first overall since the year 2000, how many of them are still currently actively playing for the team that drafted them?
Oh, that's fairly easy. I mean, considering the fact that we know that basically most of them from earlier on are no longer in the league. So it's Joe Burrow.
Yes.
Trevor Lawrence.
That is correct.
Bryce Young.
Yep.
Caleb Williams.
Yes.
Cam Ward.
Yes.
And Mendoza hasn't taken a snap, so that would be it.
Nice. All right. Very well done. Yes, those are the 6 QBs. And that just speaks to the level of quarterback play and the problem. So to answer your original question, Ari, the way I see it is that it comes with a lack of planning to begin with of when you drafted the QB. We are no longer being patient with those QBs and giving them the ability to sit behind a veteran and learn and develop. And then finally, it's what have you done for me lately? If you have not shown me within year, let's say 2, that you are indeed a franchise QB, I am just going to move on from you.
So basically to summarize, right? So reason number one is the fact that the teams that are usually drafting at the top of the draft are the teams that have the least idea of how to move forward with their franchise. That's number one.
Yes.
Number two, the rookie contract scale now is of such that basically if you're drafted to a bad team, which is the team that draft top 5 and definitely number 1, if that team doesn't turn it around in 2 years, the head coach will be fired, the offensive coordinator will be fired, the GM will be fired. Now, they have nothing to do with the QB, plus they have 1 other year until they have to actually make a commitment financially past that rookie contract. They'd have to decide. Obviously, they could keep him, but that is the first time that they could give you a contract extension and pick up your option for the 5th year. So you basically have 1 more year in a lot of cases for these QBs. And the Bears are, in my opinion, the best example of this, running through Trubisky and then Justin Fields and then finally Caleb Williams, where they literally did this, going through all of these different coaches, going through different GMs, going through different coordinators. And it seems like now it's finally in a good place for them. And that brings me kind of like to the second overall point after the structure changing, which is something else that you alluded to, is I see that really since the 2022 draft, where the only quarterback drafted in the first round that year was Kenny Pickett, it was known to be a very weak quarterback class. Since then, I see a vast change in the landscape of not only the teams that are drafting the quarterbacks, but the quarterbacks coming into the NFL. What do you think contributes to the fact that CJ Stroud can make it to the playoffs in his first season? Jaden Daniels can make it to the playoffs in his first season. Obviously, Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, Drake May, they're all making it to the playoffs very, very early on. What do you think has contributed to the fact that pretty much before that, that had never been the case? And just going on 1 draft before Kenny Pickett, we're talking about Trevor Lawrence, who's been in the playoffs, I think, twice in his 6 or 7 seasons in the NFL. Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones. I mean, what a disaster of quarterbacks drafted. I mean, even the 49ers, who seemingly get everything right, busted at number 3 overall to draft their quarterback. So clearly there was a significant change. And what do you make of that change? And how do you think this all came to be?
So I think, first of all, the fact that we're seeing a lot of A, head coaches, and B, offensive and defensive coordinators actually, once they're like fired off of whatever team, just, turned over again, they're ending up back in the college ranks. So we're starting to see more often than not these pro-style offenses already in college, which is getting the QBs ready, or more prepared, I should say, to move on into the NFL. That's first of all. Second of all, if we look at the more recent examples of where the teams seemingly seem to be getting the QB right, it's because they had a plan on how to develop their QB, whether it was the head coach themselves or the right offensive coordinator / QB coach that actually knew how to go ahead and develop that QB into being successful. And so when you go ahead and you put the right player in the right environment, that's going to give a better example. You had mentioned before the Chicago Bears and how they kind of shuffled through. The reason why Caleb Williams actually played the way Caleb Williams played last year, and remember, for our listeners, me, I was shitting all over him. And I was saying he was a bust, and I didn't think that Ben Johnson was going to make that much of a big difference for him. And I stand corrected. Ben Johnson was absolutely the right head coach for him. And we can see that, what a difference that makes. You mentioned also Mac Jones. Mac Jones, New England Mac Jones, looks like a bust. 49ers Mac Jones, who after being under Shanahan, now all of a sudden looks, when he was replacing Brock Purdy with his turf toe, he all of a sudden looks like a QB that maybe, just maybe, might end up being a decent starting QB in the league. And I might even stretch it a little further and say franchise QB if he has the ability to play in the right system that knows how to properly develop him. So I feel like we're seeing this trend of doing better where the overall quality of QB coming out happens to be of better quality. The teams that they are going to and seeing success with is because there was actually a plan. You had mentioned Jaden Daniels. Well, we know that, without Cliff Kingsbury, that just doesn't happen. So put them in the right situation, have a plan, you'll see success. Take Bo Nix, right? So many people are like, oh, Bo Nix, he was the worst QB that came out of that group, blah, blah, blah. And he was a broken ankle away from playing in the Super Bowl last year. And that is because he was exactly like Sean Payton knew exactly what he was going to do. And of all the QBs that were available, Sean Payton knew that Bo Nix was going to be the one that was able to translate out his plan onto the field the way he did for so many years successfully with Drew Brees. He knew that he was going to be the one to be the best at it. So, in my opinion, those are the things that have contributed to the recent success. And interestingly enough, because of what a QB whisperer he is the outlier is actually J.J. McCarthy with KOC, and yes, the jury is still out on him. But if you ask me as we sit here right now in May, I think Kyler Murray is going to beat out J.J. McCarthy for the starting job with Minnesota. So those are my thoughts and answers to your questions.
So, I mean, just to talk about the KOC, what you just brought up. I mean, it's really interesting because I think that what's keeping JJ McCarthy back is injuries. He just hasn't been healthy enough to run enough, basically to get the snap count up to where he needs to be in order to develop in that system. And who knows how injured he is and how much he feels like he needs to play because of that. So it's all just like a question. Sometimes it just happens and it's bad luck or he just can't stay healthy. I mean, we've seen it happen before to a large extent. Andrew Luck, RG3. Like we've had quarterbacks before that just they couldn't stay upright for long enough, and they need as talented as they may have been, they just couldn't pull it off in the NFL. Yeah, so that's really it's unfortunate, but I don't want to lump him in with bust just yet, even though it's definitely trending in that direction. What I did want to discuss instead is basically one key element that makes it so hard for college quarterbacks to adjust into the NFL, which is basically an explanation for why this is even a conversation. Which pretty much, taking the college game is that it's almost exclusively run out of shotgun now. And in the NFL, run fits are run pretty much exclusively out of under center. And so therefore play action is almost exclusively run from under center. And this is one of the things that college quarterbacks have the hardest time adjusting to. And the reason for this is twofold. Number one is beside for everything else happening at the NFL game, which is tighter windows and better coverage and more disguises of coverage, blitzes, delayed blitzes, and all of that amazing stuff, beside for the fact that obviously the NFL talent level is far superior to the college talent level. The second thing, which not a lot of people talk about, is when you snap the football from under center, your first 2 or 3 steps, you take your eyes off the field. You have to basically pivot, and then you lose track of where things are on defense. So there's this very famous situation, which you alluded to with Kyle Shanahan and Mac Jones, which is why are quarterbacks resurrecting their careers under, the new Shanahan coaching tree, right? McVay, Shanahan, KOC. Why does this keep on happening? And I wanted to just explain that one of the reasons that what they do so well is pre-snap motion and shifts, which basically Mike McDaniel used this in Tua's best season. Mike McDaniel used this in, I think, 37% of the Dolphins snaps had pre-snap. Dolphins plays had pre-snap movement, which basically shows the quarterback where defenders are going to be before you even have to snap the ball, which then opens up everything else, especially in a zone run offense. So the fact that you can take one of the largest aspects of what makes it hard to adjust the NFL game and kind of have a loophole and or a workaround for it is just one of the reasons why Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and that whole tree have had so much success in creating this easy playing field for quarterbacks to acclimate into the NFL.
So, what's interesting, Ari, is that you really need to wonder how the NIL and the transfer portal is going to affect QBs. Because back in the day, when you committed to a university, right, you wanted to play for a certain coach. And then now, how do you, on the flip side, how do you now turn around and if you get offered a tremendous amount of money in NIL, how are you not going to go ahead and use the transfer portal? So that would be part one to it. Part two is I do believe that what we're going to see a positive effect to the NIL happening is there's less of a rush to come out early. Since you're already making money, especially if you're like providing for your family, etc., you have the ability to spend that senior year in university. That could be a whole season more of QB development and starting experience. Even if it's on the smaller college stage, you're still getting that experience. And so I think that what brings an interesting question mark is Ty Simpson. So Ty Simpson really was only a starter for 1 year. And you've got like a million metrics and stats and analytics on how if they don't start X number of games in college, the odds of them being successful is like practically zero, yada, 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 yada. Now, do I think that he got drafted into a phenomenal situation for him? Yeah, he's going to be with McVay. He's going to learn under future Hall of Famer Matthew Stafford, and he gets to sit for, barring injury, sit for at least a year, if not 2 years, behind him, learning, developing, and not being just thrust into the opening lineup where he's going to have to perform right away. So I do view the transfer portal, and NIL. I do believe that it is going to contribute into getting a higher caliber starting QB. And I do think that we're going to see more likely to see the Bo Nixes, Jaden Daniels, CJ Strouds in their first year trend versus all of the busts that did not get their teams to the playoffs in their first year.
Well, yeah, it's a great point to make, and even as the quarterbacks that you mentioned are of the mobile variety, and how much the moving pocket has also been a huge factor in, for example, Andy Reid and Sean Payton's ability to develop these young quarterbacks right off the bat. But to your main point, which is about the NILs, right? I think that it's absolutely fascinating because one of the things that people kept on talking about over the years is, you're giving this very young player, a ton of money. You're giving them, a completely new situation where they have to immediately acclimate to that has nothing to do with the NFL game. And what the NIL is basically offering is to have more of a progression in that regard. Like, you're not just getting that money and saying, like, what I'm going to do? Buy a house, buy a car, buy a boat, buy a plane. and jewelry. Like that's just not the way that it's happening. Another aspect is that they'll have to continue studying in college. That's also a very positive aspect. And then the last part is the adversity aspect. If you're constantly going to new programs, you have to learn new schemes and new systems, and B, you have to get to know a completely new coaching staff. People may not like you, may not have friends there. There's so many other factors, and basically you're dealing with adversity from a much younger age. Look at Jaden Daniels, who you went from I think it was LSU. But that's where it was. He went from LSU to Arizona State, and all of that.
I believe he went the opposite direction.
The opposite direction. Yes,
he was Arizona State, and then ultimately went on to have his. I believe he won the Heisman that year. His Heisman winning season and national championship.
Yes, you are correct. He was at Arizona State when Herman Edwards was there, and then he left after Herman Edwards left, went to LSU. But again, like it's a completely different system, and so whether it's that and the fact of there just seemingly is such a much larger crossover between coaches. Seemingly every offseason there are coordinators and head coaches from the collegiate level hired into the NFL, and also the other way around. Like you can just look at Frank Reich and the Jets as a prime example of something that would never happen in the past, which is he goes from being an offense coordinator and head coach in the NFL to coordinating for one season in college, back to the NFL. Now, you can say whatever you want about Frank Reich specifically, but this is just a model where it happened with Bill O'Brien. Basically, anyone who was ever considered an offensive genius at one point and then had everything go wrong for them in the NFL, they follow this. But seriously, the bottom line is that every single offseason, there's a handful of coordinators that are going from the college level to the NFL and the NFL to the college level. And seemingly it makes the games just a little bit more similar. So the question now becomes, Ari, are we in the golden age of QBs? Is this, a time where you can, for the first time maybe in history, you can go ahead, draft a QB top 5 and expect to make it to the playoffs in an unbelievable turnaround a la CJ Stroud and Jaden Daniels or even Drake May the following season? Or do you think this is just some kind of cycle that we're going through, tremendous quarterbacks in the draft right now, and it's bound to stop? What do you think about that?
So I think two things. Number one, I do think we are heading into a golden age of QBs. And the reason why is if you look at the players, and forget, I'm not just talking about QBs for a minute. If you look at the talent that is coming out of college every year and being drafted into the NFL, everybody is bigger, faster, more athletic. Like you look at every position, and that's true. You also see now, like, if we think of back in the day, you had, let's say, like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Eli Manning. Yeah, sure. Could they scramble out of the pocket if need be? Sure. But you knew they were not going to take off running very likely, and needing to account for their running ability, wasn't something you even needed to worry about. Nowadays, what QB can't run? And which opens you up to all the RPOs and different fakes like that, the tush push. And so we do see that the QBs as in general and are becoming that much better. Their arms are that much stronger. They're that much faster. They're that much more athletic. So the level of athleticism coming into it is already higher. That's first of all. Second of all, we can see that as the level of athlete to get into the NFL is rising, to play at the big schools and to be successful in college, we can see there as well. There we can see the players getting bigger, faster, stronger, more athletic, more talented. And especially if you want to snag those big NIL deals, you're going to have to be just that much better. So I feel that we're getting better talent at all levels, and that's going into the NFL. Now, you're still going to need, in order to actually be successful. And again, like you had mentioned at the front end of this, the teams that are drafting the QBs that high are probably the teams that did the worst the previous season. There's a decent to good chance they just fired their head coach as well. So if you've gone ahead and you have gone ahead and actually hired the right coach or the right offensive coordinator and the right QB coach, and you have the right plan to go ahead and develop, we will be able to see talent instead of being squandered. We will see it being actually used well. And I think what's going to be very telling to actually see, are we truly in the golden age of QB or not, is going to be next year's draft, when we're going to see Moore and Manning and the other names escape me at this given second, but there's a whole slew of like next year supposedly is looking at like it's going to be one of the greatest QB drafts that we've ever seen. Even beyond the one we recently had where we saw 6 QBs go in the first round. So to answer your question, I do believe that we are heading into the golden age of the QB. You're still going to need to be able to develop and coach them. But yes, we are now we are entering an era of where with the right coach, you can expect to see teams go from worst to first and actually make the playoffs in the first year, max 2 of a QB, a rookie QB.
So just for a second to indulge our listeners on what we're talking about for next year, because maybe not everyone knows what's happening. It's Dante Moore and Arch Manning are definitely at the top. And then there's Ohio State's quarterback, Julian Saint. There's Lenore Sellers from South Carolina. There's Drew Mastemaker from Oklahoma State. There's the 2 CJ Carr from Notre Dame. And there's, wait, I'm forgetting the other CJ. Okay, fine. Just CJ.
Isn't it CJ like Ugly? He has like one of those like. Am I wrong?
I can't recall off the top of my head. I thought I had it, and then it just wasn't there. There's Jordan Mailata from USC. There is Darian Mensah from Miami, and then there's the interesting thing that's going on with Brendan Sorsby now. I think that's 9 quarterbacks that are talked about as very possibly being first-round quarterbacks, and some of them can join Arch Manning and Dante Moore in the top 5 conversation. So that's just wild. There's never even been this amount of quarterbacks going into the following season of guys that people are like making note of that are interesting. Like this never happens. Right now, there are borderline 10 quarterbacks who are top 40 picks. That's never, ever happened. Just in and of itself, that's unprecedented. And obviously, Arch Manning and Dante Moore, if they would have come out this year, and also Lenore Sellers for that case, they would have all made the case for going top 5, if not first overall. So, it's a really, really wild experience. And, it's a crazy time because we could literally be having a totally different conversation about this, following not next season, but the season after that, when we see how all of these guys do and where they get drafted. But could this be like the blowout before this ends for a while? Or is this just going to continue going? Like that's the part that I'm not sure I can wrap my head around. And, yeah, go ahead, Ari.
I was going to say, I think it's still too early to tell, because we need to see who are, like, if we're looking at like the freshman and junior QBs of this year, like, are they good enough? We don't know yet. I mean, look, some of the guys, you see some of these commits coming out of high school now, dear Lord, I mean, they just look insane. I mean, going even younger than that, Peyton Manning's 14-year-old, Jesus, what an arm. That kid is 14 years old and has a sick arm. Wow. So, and you got Peyton Manning as your dad. Like, if anybody can go ahead and train you up, it's going to be Peyton Manning. So, I think we're in for we're in for a good time, but I just, to really properly, that's the word, be able to make the most of these QBs, we got to make sure to develop, and develop some more.
So putting it out there to our listeners, like we had the pseudo Mac Jones and Malik Willis situations next year, so we can fold them into the question as well. But I'd like to hear if any of our listeners think they know who the next QB revival could be. Could it be Kenny Pickett? Is Malik Willis going to take the Dolphins to the playoff? Is Mac Jones, gonna really take that next step? Who do you think the next guy to kind of break out seemingly after being a total bust would be, following in the Baker and Darnold footsteps?
It's a great question. And listeners, by all means, hit us up on YouTube, hit us up on Instagram, hit us up on our website. Send us a carrier pigeon or smoke signals. No, we probably won't actually see the smoke signals. But yeah, Ari, that's a great question to put out there for our listeners. And I'd be very excited to see some of the comments we get back, between now and the next time that we record, and see how exactly what people think. But let's ask you that question. Who do you think is most likely to be the next Sam Darnold?
I mean, I don't know. I genuinely, if I have an answer, I tell you. I don't know. I like, you look around and you see like, Kenny Pickett kind of fits that mold. Coming out, some people thought that he should have gone first overall, but has he even signed with someone this offseason?
That's a great question. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in him. I didn't believe in him coming out, and I don't believe in him in being able to have a Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones, even Mac Jones type revival. No, I don't see that. I think the one who has the best immediate chance to show that obviously would be Malik Willis, because he will be starting for the Dolphins. I do think that the most likely QB to go the Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield route, I do believe will be Mac Jones next season.
I had a call and I totally blanked on it. My call, again, it's not going to be this season because he's still with the Titans, but when he is freed from the Titans, it's going to be Will Levis. I really think that guy can be an NFL starter. Like, I really do. I don't think he'll be as good as Mayfield or Darnold, but I do see something there. So that would be my call.
No. He is he excels at two things: mayonnaise eating and leaked sex tapes. That's all he's got going for him. He is not going to have the next revival. Just say it.
I'm pretty good at one of those things too. I'm not going to tell you which one it is, though.
Ooh, okay. Hot take right there.
Yes. Yeah. So it's really, I think it's quite the question. I think we're coming toward a time where we could potentially see a mid-round quarterback pop off for the first time in a while. I think obviously we had Brock Purdy in the 7th round. Like, when does that happen? It happens once every 15 years. Before that, it was Tony Romo as a UDFA. But the mid-round quarterback, the Dak Prescott, the Kirk Cousins, who comes in. Russell Wilson, exactly. We haven't had that in a while now, and I think we're due for one of those guys from this year's draft, whether it be a Garrett Nussmeier or a Carson Beck, but one of those kinds of guys from the middle of this year's draft that everyone was saying, they're going to be competing for a number 1 spot going into this draft, and then they just totally fell off the radar with a terrible season or just overall mediocrity. One of them will rise up and become a legit quarterback in this league. That's my call.
Okay, I like that hot take. I mean, Greg Nussmeier will be like, he'll have to take the a la Jimmy Garoppolo route, just because, barring something terrible happening to Mahomes, we're not going to see him start anytime soon. But I do agree. I think we're due. Not that I would call it a mid-round, but we have, Tyler Shug from last year, who was 2nd round. He wasn't a 1st-round QB. And if he can build off of the season he had last season, which I believe he can, between their draft pick and getting him a new shiny object at wide receiver, Kellen Moore being a high-octane offensive-minded coach, So I think that we could see a nice year for him. So we'll see how that all plays out. And of course, the QB that I am most excited about to really take the next step in year 2 would be none other than my boy, who happy birthday, his birthday was yesterday, Jackson Dart.
That's a surprise to me. I thought you were going to go with anyone else. Anyone else? No, just joking. So yeah, I'm honestly very excited to see the marriage of Jackson Dart and John Harbaugh. I'm very curious. I think the Giants are going to be one of the most interesting cases of football to watch, because John Harbaugh is really one of an era that is seemingly ending in the NFL, of a style to play. And as much as we're moving into a more, a different style, and I can't remember which of the Ravens players addressed this after Jesse Minter was hired, and he kind of spoke out about it and spoke ill of Harbaugh, which I never like to see in public. But I'd for all, as much as whatever I care about the Giants, I'd like to see that John Harbaugh style of that just like toughness and lunch pail football continue. So I'm really hoping that there's a level of success there.
Speaking of which, Ari, do you know what the John Harbaugh's opening week record is in 18 seasons with the Ravens?
16-2.
I wish. No, it was 12-6. So
I got the numbers all right.
Yes, you did. Just in a bit of the wrong order. His teams are ready for week 1. Some of the players, and I saw that article too, complaining that he trains them too hard, it causes injuries, yada yada yada. No, it's time to continue to bring back some old school football. This definitely gives me like Tom Coughlin type vibes, and I'm excited for what John Harbaugh is going to bring in this era. And I do believe that the Giants are a playoff team this year. I really, really believe it. And like I mentioned, when we hire John Harbaugh, we will win a Super Bowl in the next 3 to 5 years, but we will definitely be a playoff team in this year. And I don't even doubt that.
So just before we sign off, I just wanted to say that the 12-6 record isn't crazy, given the fact that it would literally come out to about 11 wins in a football season, which again, it's like, not crazy, but it's definitely very good.
Well, I more look at it as the standalone of, are you ready? Because a lot of, especially since the most recent CBA, where you're not doing 2-a-days anymore, and it a lot of times really takes a team a month to really actually get the identity and really kind of come together and play cohesively as a team and as a unit. The fact that John Harbaugh, especially in the tough NFC North that they play in, and that, that rivalry that you have within the division, the fact that he was able to win 12 out of his 18 games, 2/3 of his week 1 games, I'm not looking at what it means for the season overall, but I am looking at the fact that the Giants will be ready, and I do believe that they will be able to beat the Cowboys.
So John Harbaugh's record in first games of the season is 12-6. His record in final games of the season is 1-11.
Okay. And how many are those? Hold on. How many are those is because they've already locked up a playoff spot?
No, I meant in the playoffs, the final game, meaning he won 1 Super Bowl, and then he's 13-11 in the playoffs. So easy math is basically 1 Super Bowl win is the last game. Everyone's last game is a loss except for the Super Bowl winner. In the playoffs, so I just meant that as a slight jab, Ari, just to wipe the smirk off of your face. That's basically what it was about.
Well, look, one of our teams is going to the playoffs this year, and one of our teams is firing their head coach midseason. And the Giants will not be firing John Harbaugh, so you can sit there and make all your comments, but when the season ends, at the end of the seasons, one of the Aries is going to be happy, one of the Aries is going to be sad, and I am happy to bet
just the same
money.
Just the same. Not sad, just the same.
Well, I'm confident that I'm going to be the happier of the two Aris given our team's outcomes this season. All right. On that note, Ari, it's time to bring this episode to a close. Ari, always a pleasure. And to all of our listeners out there, please go ahead, find us on YouTube, give us a subscribe, find us on Instagram, go ahead and give us a follow there as well. Our intention and goal is to start releasing social clips as well, especially as we approach the upcoming season. Go on Apple Podcasts, go on Spotify, leave us a 5-star review. And guys, we would love to hear your feedback. So on behalf of both Ari and myself, peace. We out.